That was the slow pan. By raise of hands, how many of you know what this t-shirt is from? We'll get to that later. Tonight, brothers and sisters, we are gathered here tonight to talk about our lost brother, Kenneth Anger. As most of you know, filmmaker Kenneth Anger died just a few weeks ago. I don't know exactly when. They didn't even announce it until like 3 weeks after it happened, to get his estate settled. Now, before you go and ask me what happened to Kenneth Anger, if you don't know who Kenneth Anger was, he was 96 years old, so that's what happened to him, okay? There's no foul play. I know this book would say the mob took him out, or the Catholics took him out. But you know what? He was 96 years old. By Hollywood standards, that's like 150. Okay, so what we're going to do tonight, I binge watched every single Kenneth Anger film that I could find, mostly on YouTube. They're right out there on YouTube, so you don't have to go far to find them. So just make yourself a list. In fact, I'll make a list in the credits. But this being the 200th episode of the Late Night Picture Show, we have prizes. We'll talk about that book later. I have buttons. Here. There's a young Kenneth himself. I think I showed you that one. No, I showed you this one. You'd have never guessed what it is. Why is that so shiny? Stop it. There's Jane. Here, I'm a Scorpio. I'm wilding out. Huh? And last but not least, there's another Hollywood Babylon pen in neon. Okay, so I got, I think, 8 pins here. First 8 people to comment on any of these videos, and I'm not sure how many there's going to be. 2, maybe 3. 2. Gets a pin. I'll send it right to you. So, okay. Hang on, before we go. We just got a tall rum drink tonight. Oh, and I hate to break it to the Myers rum people, but I finished that bottle of Myers rum, and I don't think I'm going to be buying another one. We figured out that it tastes like molasses. I'm just not so sure that it's my favorite. It's unique. I get why people kind of latched onto it at first, because it was different. But I've got some like Kraken Golden or something like that. Much better. All right, let's get started. These aren't in chronological order, by the way. They're kind of more in order by, I can't really put them in order by subject because they're all over the place. But we're going to go through about 1965 here, missing one that I put in the other show. So in 1947, young Kenneth Anger, going by the name Anger, Engelmeyer, by the way. You just drop the whole middle out of there and you got Anger. This early work brought Anger attention, good and bad. Now this was a black and white film, very surreal. Hard to say what was going on, but the bad here was that he was brought up on obscenity charges. And looking back on the film today, it's 2023, in case you're watching this 6 years from now. It's 2023, and it seems laughable that anything in this movie would be found obscene. I wrote here, what was too much? I mean, there's a scene where the guy, he's got like a, where's my glass? Little firecracker right here, glued where his pecker would be. The fuse is sparking. I mean, really? Was it that? Was it the guy like bumbling around? And I'm not going to get my Christmas tree, but bumbling around with the Christmas tree on his head. A bloodied individual who'd been beat. The blood being washed away with milk. Was that too much? Muscle-bound sailor flexing for Anger, young Kenneth Anger? Or was it merely that he was just getting too many senators horny for dick? I'll let you be the judge. I know which one I would pick. Okay. So that was 1947. We follow a couple of years later, 1949, and we have, I understand, the wife of the president of Mexico. Don't ask me how this happened. I mean, shit just happened back then, okay? In Color, 1949. This film essentially shows, and I didn't get her name. I'll try to find it, but the First Lady of Mexico picking a very fancy dress to go out. You would think that she's going to a ball, and these dresses, mind you, are not 1949. Think more, they were like my grandma's era, like the 20s. They were like flapper dresses, like sequins, and like probably pretty damn expensive nowadays, if any of them survived. I wrote here a roaring 20s kind of feel. The original version, set to Verdi, is lovely and, well, operatic. I mean, classical. There's no singing, but classical music, which is good. It kind of goes. In 1970, however, the movie was re-released with music by Jonathan Helper. And wow, what a difference. This time we kind of took and we put that late 60s, kind of early 70s kind of vibe in there. And if any of you were alive in the 70s, you know that the 20s kind of came back in the early 70s, 20s style. So all of a sudden, this movie looks like it was shot in the late 60s, and released in 1970. This version is phenomenal, and when I look at her, I see both Dr. Frankenfurter from the Rocky Horror Picture Show, and I see Isabella Rossellini in Blue Velvet, right there on the screen in 1949. Dorothy Valens, but in green sequins rather than black. Could have been a Blue Velvet curtain. Okay. Next up, 1950, Rabbit's Moon. A lot of confusion about the release on this one. Unsure if the final version that I saw was 93. It said it was a restored 1971 version, but I think it was 1993 before it was completely whole. And again, music. This is the tale of a clown/rabbit. So you know I liked it. There was a clown/rabbit. And it's love for the moon, mostly told in dance, kind of like pantomime. Apparently there wasn't much of the 1950 original left, and what did exist was mirror imaged. In 1971, Anger was able to restore the original 16 minutes in beautiful blue-tinged black and white with doo-wop music that only made it more surreal. Now, maybe this happened in 1971. Was that me or was that the camera? Maybe this happened in 1971, but wasn't released until 1993. That is certainly possible. We don't have big bankroll money here. These are short films, clocking in, between 6 and 20 minutes. Yeah, these aren't Hollywood blockbusters, so don't be looking for that. The doo-wop music just makes this all the more surreal, and also hints at future David Lynch feels, employing this same type of feel-good, nostalgic movie for those of us boomers down to Xers, maybe some millennials. Their parents are going to like doo-wop. And so you get the whole kind of feels with like this very strange visual going on. I wrote here it took 21 years to be whole, and it may have taken longer than that, so don't quote me. But this is a masterpiece. Now, mind you, this is not the first Kenneth Anger movie that I saw. We'll get to that. But going back and looking at these older movies, I now understand why he was such an important figure in film and the inspiration that he brought. Ode d'Artifice. Artifice? I don't know how to say that in French. I know. 1953. So I read somewhere, and I don't know where. I read that this was filmed in black and white with a red filter, which gave it a very high contrast kind of a feel, like almost no grays, just black and white, or maybe like one shade of gray in between. It was very high contrast, with shades of gray stationary with the black, while the white danced around on the screen. The white seemed to move around. we cut between the dancing waters of the fountains and a woman in an 18th century dress. You know, one of those frilly kind of things. They probably had a parasol, but not in the movie because it was nighttime. She's running around here and there in this garden. I don't know where this was filmed, but it's a garden. Near the end, I began to wonder, me anyway, Murph the Clown, I began to wonder, what's she running from? I mean, you got all this beautiful scenery going on around. Again, very high contrast, black and white, almost like my suit back here. White dots dancing around on a black screen with a little bit of gray. So, whether this was actually the inspiration or not, for any of you who've seen Kurosawa's Dreams, there's a scene where the cherry blossom trees, the blossoms are coming off the trees. Or maybe even in Drugstore Cowboy where the bubbles are rising up. All right here in this movie in 1953. Somebody asked Kurosawa, is Kurosawa still is he still around? I don't know. Anyway. Beautiful is what I wrote here. Okay, next we move into some more familiar territory. For those of you who've seen Kenneth Anger, 1964 here is probably your first exposure. It was mine. Actually, my first exposure was that book. But the first movie I saw was Scorpio Rising, 1964. And I have to say, after seeing his earlier films, this one's lost a little bit of its luster. I mean, it was shocking and very overtly homosexual. If you haven't been aware up till now, Kenneth Anger was openly gay in the 40s. If you didn't get that inference about senators horny for dick in the first movie. Okay. It runs somewhere between a documentary and a music video. A lot of people say Kenneth Anger is responsible for the modern music video. And that may actually have been true, because there wasn't like a lot of audio, in these movies. There wasn't audio. There wasn't a boom mic and a gaffer, and it was very much filmed and then put to whatever music he could get a hold of. And at this point, we were able to get some great songs. It was like even when I was a kid, there were a lot of these 50s and 60s classics still on jukeboxes wherever you might find them. Here in Salt Lake, there was a restaurant called Bill and Nada's that had those tabletop jukeboxes, and you could still get 16 tons and a lot of the songs that were in this movie, including Blue Velvet. So, the music is a great trip down memory lane, and the video documents what was an already burgeoning leather scene. Now, some of you, if you're like homophobic and don't know much about gay history or gay culture in general, there is a leather scene. I'm sure that you're probably familiar with the Village People. There was a Leatherman in the Village People. And you're at least familiar with Judas Priest. Okay? Rob Halford. Motorcycle, leather, spikes. That was big in the daddy gay scene. Complete with the Nazi memorabilia, and I know this is where a lot of you Twitter kids are going to have trouble. It's hard to separate early bikers and Nazi imagery. It was just there. And it wasn't there just for shock. It may have been in the movie just for shock value, but like the Hells Angels formed like out of World War II, right? A lot of these pilots and soldiers came home, and they kind of wanted to belong to, they missed that camaraderie. They weren't all Masons. They wanted to be in a group of men and have that kind of camaraderie. Well, the Hells Angels, at least then, were very much a racist group. I don't know if they were a hate group, but they were very much a racist criminal enterprise. So they did not allow Hispanics, blacks, any people of color in the gang. So they went and formed their own gangs. I mean, this is where the Banditos, this is where the rest of these motorcycle gangs came from, is because the Hells Angels was whites only. Nazi flags everywhere. Nazi memorabilia. It was very heavy in the early biker gangs. Now, I loved how this one kind of cut back and forth between these current bikers, like reveling and partying it up. And mind you, it's not the Hells Angels featured here. It's the gay bikers. They're partying it up, and sometimes naked with an erection. Chasing each other around. But it kind of moves back and forth between this biker party going on in current 1964, or whenever this was filmed, probably the year before, and Marlon Brando's The Wild One, which was in the late 50s, I believe. So here's Marlon Brando being a tough guy on the screen on his bike with the trophy. He's got a trophy on his handlebars. And these gay bikers living it up. And then we all of a sudden get religious, and we cut to a movie with Jesus and the apostles. Now, it wasn't the Bela Lugosi Jesus thing, but it was like similar to that. It was an old depiction of Jesus and the apostles cut back and forth with this party. So we bring in religious Jesus and the apostles and a rowdy biker party. Now, there's not much of a story to this. It runs more of like a documentary, like I said. It's like a documentary of this counterculture group, specifically gay bikers. And it's set to wonderful old tunes that all of us like to hear. I think even you kids will like these tunes. You won't like the Nazi memorabilia, but if you just keep in mind that, that's what it was all about. So it spilled over into other biker culture. So even Ed Roth, if you've heard of Ed Roth wasn't a Nazi. Big Daddy Roth, he wasn't a Nazi, but he pilfered an earlier German symbol, the Iron Cross, which was like a medal of bravery going back long before the Nazis. It was on the side of the planes in World War II, or World War I. Snoopy fought against a German plane with an Iron Cross on it. But Big Daddy Roth adopted that cross and turned it into the Surfer's Cross. He sold surfer helmets basically German army helmets with an iron cross on it. So don't get on me. Don't at me. The Iron Cross is not Nazi unless there's a swastika in the middle of it. Yeah, the Nazis put a swastika in it. It's German, but it's not Nazi. Okay, so then we start getting into some sponsorship here. We're moving into 1965, the year I was born, and the year this book came out. Originally, 1965. So we have custom car commandos. And my guess is that this is exactly where the K spelling of custom came from. Custom culture with K's came directly from this movie title. And this was straight up car porn. A buff guy in tight jeans polishing a 27 Ford Hot Rod, 1927 that is, intermixed with scenes of a similar hot rod, all to the sound of the Paris Sisters, who I was not that familiar with, a cover of Bobby Darin's Dream Lover by a sister group. The chrome interior of the 27 Model T is truly something to behold. If you're a car guy, you gotta see this movie. Apparently the Ford Motor Company, we'll just throw that away, we're not really rating these movies. The Ford Motor Company gave Kenneth Anger money to make a movie about hot rod culture and hot rod movies. And yeah, he spent a lot of it, and this is, we just got 6 minutes of a guy polishing an old Ford Hot Rod. Lovingly. But if you're gay, you're going to like this guy bending over this hot rod. So that concludes our first portion. We will now move in. I'm gonna make another drink. El Diablo, maybe. I don't know. And I don't know how I'm going to filter these movies, because I'm certainly not going to single them out and make some of them black and white. I think they're just going to be as is this time around. So, let's go make ourselves another drink. Also, this is episode 200. The next episode will be 200B. Since it's all the same thing, we're not even going to separate and say that this is 2 different episodes of the Late Night Picture Show. All right, we'll be right back.
Let's all go to the lobby. Let's all go to the lobby. Let's all go to the lobby to get ourselves a treat.
Delicious things to eat.
The popcorn can't be beat. The sparkling drinks are just dandy. The chocolate bars and the candy. So let's all go to the lobby to get ourselves a treat.